I remember there was a time where in France, there was a debate on who's more talented. Is it Dembele or Mbappe? I was among people who thought that he was more talented than Mbappe, actually. But the reason why Mbappe is more effective is because Mbappe is more athletic.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Clean Strike. Today we are going to be looking at Ousmane Dembélé, one of the standouts of the 2024-25 season. He's been in blistering form and I'm sure Jibril and Alejandro have something to say about what they think of him this season.
Yes, quite simply, he's been the best player in the French league and one of the best players in European football. And I remember at the start of the year when I said that he was the best player to start 2025. Some people laughed. It's not so funny anymore because he is one of the best players in the world. If you were to do a top 5 players in Europe right now, he is in the top 5. Now, the order we can always argue about it, but he's sensational. And as you hinted there, the fact that he's 2-footed obviously makes him practically unguardable on the football pitch.
We can say Dembele is the Russian roulette that has become more stable and more consistent with Luis Enrique and PSG this season. Definitely. The memory of Dembele, especially the memory we had in Barcelona, was a player who had a lot of issues, who didn't have so much continuity on the game, also who was in trouble to produce as many goals as he's producing now. But now under Luis Enrique, he has improved so much, and this label of Russian roulette that he had in the last years, I think it's completely over.
Obviously, Dembele has been in amazing form this season, but he's been around for quite a while. He started his career with Rennes youth and in the second team for between 2010 and 2015. He then spent a season in the first team before a move to Borussia Dortmund. An electric season there saw him move to Barcelona for a fee of 105 million euros. He was part of the France team that won the 2018 World Cup and has won 5 league titles in his career, 3 at Barcelona and 2 at PSG, including this season. Jibril, why don't you tell us a bit more about his time at Rennes and Borussia Dortmund, and why did he gain so much attention at such a young age?
Yes, so his time at Rennes, he was so talented that first season. I remember it, he would score goals. I actually think he was more clinical in his first season in professional football than he was later on. Because when he went to Dortmund, he wasn't scoring a lot of goals. He was just delivering a lot of assists. But his first season at Rennes, it was just blistering, and it kind of reminds me of Mbappe's first season as well, in the sense that nobody really expected him to take the league by storm the way he did. And he came in and 2-footed, very fresh, he was like a silent assassin on the pitch. You wouldn't see him moan, you wouldn't see him talk too much, but he would score goals after goals, and he went on a scoring run towards the end of that season in 2015, 2016. I think that's where Dortmund said, okay, we have to get this kid because he will be worth 100 million if we develop him well. And rightfully so, they did. They did sell him for a big fee, but that was not obviously in the Bundesliga. Also, he confirmed all the potential we saw in the Liga. So Dembele is lucky in the sense that his career progressed the way it should have. Started in the French league, went to the Bundesliga, went to the Liga. So those are the stepping stones you need as a young player to kind of not burn yourself too quickly. When he went to Dortmund, we saw that he had football IQ, which is very rare in a young player, because he was delivering a lot of assists, and you could see that this is a player who has a lot of ability, technical ability, and the 2-footedness. That's something that kind of surprised the Germans a little bit, because it's not very common in Germany to have a player who's 2-footed. And obviously in Barcelona, it was a bit of more of a roller coaster with injuries limiting his availability. And as I like to say, availability is the best talent. Doesn't matter how much talent you have. If you are constantly injured and fatigued, and maybe your lifestyle isn't quite adequate with what a professional should be, at some point you'll get found out. But now he has at PSG, he's figured out how to maximize his talent. He's figured out how to be more clinical in front of goal. And he's obviously kept that 2-footedness that makes him, as I said earlier, unguardable. For me, he's the most unguardable French player currently, like even more so than Mbappe, because Mbappe is not 2-footed. Dembele is. And I remember there was a time where in France, there was a debate on who's more talented. Is it Dembele or Mbappe? I was among people who thought that he was more talented than Mbappe, actually. But the reason why Mbappe is more effective is because Mbappe is more athletic. Mbappe is more clinical. But in terms of pure talent, Dembele, in my opinion, is more talented than Mbappe.
Amazing.
Because the things he can do in the small spaces, Mbappe can't quite do it. Mbappe is an open space player. Dembele is very good in tight spaces.
Yes. So just going back to his time at Barcelona, Alejandro, could you, just being our resident Spanish football expert, could you give us a little bit more of a breakdown about why it didn't work there for him? Obviously, he was there for a couple of years and never really hit the heights that everyone expected him to after such a big fee of 105 million.
So, if you remember Dembele's arrival to Barcelona, it becomes in summer 2017, that it was the same summer Neymar left the club for 222 million euro. So that shows you how difficult could be the arrival for a player like Ousmane Dembele to become like the successor of Neymar in the same summer where he leaves to PSG. Also, if you remember, he arrives in the middle of a transfer battle with Real Madrid and other clubs that Barca wins, ending up paying more than 105 million euro as a fixed rate, plus 40 million euro on add-ons. That it made in that moment the most price player in the market. So with that frame, you can start that Dembele's time in Barcelona was going to be very, very difficult. On the first season, he was like performing decently according to the level. He was doing good performance under Ernesto Valverde. It was the coach that guided him and controlled him to be the Barca player. But it starts everything to go down on the roller coaster in the COVID season, in the 2019-2020, where he starts to have problems with the injuries. He starts to have problems with the hamstrings. He starts to getting injured again and again and again and again. And for example, that situation ends up in that season for Barcelona with the ungrateful 2-8 in Lisbon against Bayern Munich. So also Dembele was in the frame of that game, and everything is still hurting in Barcelona. So with Dembele, also in that moment, Dembele has some issues. For example, some media claims that they call that his life wasn't the life to suppose for a professional football player. For example, because he was spending many time playing video games late in the night. He had problems with food. They say they even hire a private chef to cook for him during his time in Barcelona. But still, that injury problem could persist and continues, and he had another injuries in the following years. But it's curious because he gets extended the contract in Barcelona in 2022. So it's quite curious that he doesn't leave Barcelona until 1 year after. So he finally managed to continue in Barcelona for 6 years at the end, but it was 6 years where the expectations of Dembele, they were high, but the reality was so low.
Yeah. Weirdly, he was Neymar's successor again, this time at PSG. Jibril, do you want to tell us a bit more about his year at PSG recently, or his 2 years at PSG now?
Very satisfying for PSG. It was a gamble. High risk, high reward. Because the fee was quite significant for a player with, I think there was 1 year left on his contract when he extended. So he's 50 million, I think, 50 million euros. With obviously he's the highest paid player in Liga currently. So it's a move that came with risk, significant risk in the context of financial fair play. He has quietly but slowly shut down all the criticism, all the suspicions that he would perform. Because his first year, it was a bit up and down, I have to admit. The first year was a bit up and down. He came into his own into the second part of the season. The fact that Mbappe was there helped a lot because Mbappe is his best buddy in football, and vice versa. Those two get along very well. So the fact that Mbappe was there helped stabilize his nerves. Now that Mbappe is not there, it actually helped him because he assumed the mantle of the top dog, the top man in the club. And it's the first time in his career that Dembele has been in a team where he's actually the top dog. In Dortmund, it was Aubameyang, if you remember, when he was there. Barcelona, when Messi's around, no one else is the top dog. At PSG now, Dembele is a top dog, and the thing to commend him for is that the fact that he's a very low maintenance star. Yes, Alejandro, I think, mentioned he had issues with nutrition and arriving late at training, video games. But now, obviously, he's a married man, so he's a family man, so priorities are straight. And he's very, he realizes that this is his prime years now that he has to deliver. One thing I want to touch on finally is that there's a video on social media that is going through. Every year we see it pop back up, where he's actually not sure which strong foot he has. Because apparently he shoots, the way I understood it, he shoots better with his left foot. But just the opposite. He shoots better with his right foot, but he considers himself the left footer. So basically, in terms of carrying the ball and dribbling, he's more adept with his left foot. But in terms of shooting the ball and generating power with your foot, he's actually better with his right foot, which is very intriguing. The way he answered that, I'm not sure he actually knows which one is which, but it's interesting. And I think it's something that we'll talk about even after his career is long done.
As you mentioned there, Jibril, one of the things we wanted to look at with Dembele is how two-footed he is. I mean, it's a completely unique talent that he has to be that two-footed. A lot of players you'd expect as professionals, they might be able to use both feet equally well, but as is evidence, they can't. Some of them have much stronger weak foots than others, and Dembele's right up there with some of the best. Just how two-footed is he? Like, is he... If you were to look at it without any past knowledge, what would you say that there's a strong foot or a weak foot, or is it completely whichever he decides in the moment will be the strong foot?
Let me explain first of all the levels of two-footedness. I think there are players who are two-footed in the sense that they can shoot with both feet, generate power with their weak foot. There are players who can only carry the ball with their weak foot, but they can't generate power with their weak foot. And there are players who can do both, generate power with their weak foot, but also carry the ball with their weak foot, which makes you a triple threat. Dembele is a triple threat in the sense that he can actually carry the ball with his weak foot, control the ball with his weak foot, dribble the ball with his weak foot, shoot, generate power with his weak foot, which is strong foot. He's the right foot. So that's why Dembele is probably the ultimate two-footed player. With others that I don't want to ruin the suspense, but I think we know who I'm talking about. I think there are players who are at the upper echelon of being two-footed, and those are the players who are unguardable on the pitch. Whichever position they play, basically, whether they're on the wing or playing centrally or playing up front, it's very hard to control them and to guard them.
Yeah, I like that phrase, unguardable. It's a bit like...
it's an NBA term. I'm an NBA fan, so...
there's two players who are not two-footed, but have manipulated their strong foot to be two-footed, which is... to be almost two-footed, which at the moment is Mohamed Salah and Lamine Yamal, in the sense that they play that Trivela pass on their left foot, which almost makes them, because there's no tell then. There's no like, I'm going to go on my right foot, I'm going to go on my left foot, or I'm going to play a Trivela. And that's exactly what Dembele has, right? You don't know if he's going to go take you down the wing or come inside or just run at you and kind of decide then again. Let's start taking a look at some examples of two-footed players, and we're going to start with some World Cup heroes. If we go back in time, there are some names well worth mentioning. So let's start with them. First of all, we've got Bobby Charlton, a Manchester United legend and winner of the 1966 World Cup with England. He also won the Ballon d'Or that year. Charlton was renowned for his shooting mastery with both feet, a skill he developed in his youth by repeatedly kicking the ball against the brick wall behind Old Trafford. I mean, if there's any way you're going to learn how to do it, it's just by doing it over and over again. And he clearly mastered that. I mean, I was reading some comments about him earlier, and every manager was basically saying he could generate as much power on his left foot as he could on his right foot, which made him incredibly dangerous, especially in football back then. Being a central midfielder who could play on the wing and play up front, he was definitely one of these players that kind of pioneered the double-footedness. Moving a bit later into football history, I believe, Jibril, you've got an example of a World Cup hero you want to share with us.
Yes, absolutely. I think you have to start with Pele. Pele had that. Remember back then, the pitches, they were very wobbly. It's not like the billiards we have now, where basically the grass is level. The ball would come to you and on your right foot, and at the last minute it would shift to your left foot. The grass was so uneven. You were basically playing on like dirt, a mix of dirt and grass. So the pitch was very unpredictable. So your ability to basically work the angles and control the ball with your left foot or your right foot at a very high quality makes you able to actually launch into an attack quicker. So Pele had that ability to. I said Pepe. Pepe was definitely not right, two-footed, but Pele was.
Pepe was another kind of player, right?
Two-footed in something else.
Maybe for the special on harder centre backs.
Yeah, exactly. Great idea.
Yeah, so Pele had that ability to basically just. For me, the most two-footed aspect about him was dribbling.
Yeah.
He could basically do things with his foot that would just bamboozle the defender, and he would just progress with the ball. His ball carrying was elite. His ball control, close control was elite. And that's why, obviously, I think he's one of the most underrated two-footed players of all time, in the sense that we don't talk about his two-footedness enough for me.
Yeah.
But he was very good at it. He was very good at the body feints, working the angles, to actually, get on top of defenders. So he's up there. He's not in the upper echelon I was mentioning in terms of two-footedness, but he's maybe in the second or third.
As you said, he's one of those where he's got the dribble aspect. Maybe he can't release the power of shot, which maybe Charlton didn't have the dribble aspect where he could release the shot. Yeah. Combine them together, unbelievable player.
Exactly.
Alejandro, have you got any World Cup heroes you want to bring to the table?
I have one that maybe is a bit vintage, but I can share with you. Andy Brehme, the footballer who scored the goal for Germany in the 1990 World Cup against Argentina. Also, he converted the penalty with his right foot. But 4 years before, in Mexico World Cup in 1986, he scored a penalty in the quarterfinal using his left foot. So it's quite a situation with Andy Brehme.
You got to have a set of balls to do that, right? You've got to be fairly confident you're going to be able to put it in the back of the net.
Also, his coach, Franz Beckenbauer, with the legend, Franz Beckenbauer, he was a manager of Germany, he said, I have known Andy for 20 years and I still don't know if he's right or left-footed. But really, even for Andy Brehme, it was a mystery for himself too, because he didn't know how to tell which was his best foot. I think that's something that is very common with players, because, for example, if I remember also Zidane, he was also left both foot, but he always said that even if we have seen him scoring very beautiful goals with the right foot, he said that he kicked much better with the left foot.
Yeah.
So also, another curiosity about Brehme, that the reason why he became like both-footed was his father, because when he was his coach, he insisted him to be both-footed. I think something similar like Bobby Charlton. So
yes. See, my dad tried that with me and it didn't work. I just refused to kick the ball with my left foot. It's a bit better now. I mean, I could probably pass it off with a pass, or I couldn't kick it any further than about 10-15 yards, but it would look like I could play a good pass. But yeah, I wish maybe I tried a little bit harder when I was younger, and maybe I'd have scored 2 World Cup penalties with the other foot.
Yeah, I think strict dads have a lot to do about it, because Heung-Min Son had a notoriously very strict dad.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why he's two-footed as well.
Maybe.
Because his dad was very military in his approach, I would say.
Moving on through football a little bit, we're going to look at some of the players in the 90s and the 2000s as football become a little bit more tactical and technical, and players needed to be a little bit better on both feet. One of the players we can't ignore when we're talking about this is, of course, Paolo Maldini. One club man, 25 seasons for AC Milan, iconic defender, playing at left back and centre back, and just using both feet whenever he fancied it, really. I mean, he's obviously got that iconic quote, which is, if I've had to make a tackle, I've made a mistake. And maybe that's why he was so good on both feet, but one of the best players to grace the game and therefore use both feet. You can't talk about both two-footed players without talking about Paolo Maldini. Jibril, I believe you might have a Ballon d'Or winner lined up for the next two-footed player.
Yeah, Arsenal fans, close your ears. So Pavel Nedved, who famously won the Ballon d'Or ahead of Thierry Henry in 2003, might be the most controversial Ballon d'Or award of all time. Arguably, it is. That's why I was teasing the Arsenal fans there. But great player. I think in the same vein as Maldini, when you have a player who has high football IQ, and along with that, he's two-footed, it makes him very special. He stands out on the pitch because he can basically put what this is in his brain, he can apply on the pitch faster and quicker because he has that ability to shift from one foot to the other. So Nedved, obviously, what you will notice about these players who are two-footed is that they can play in multiple positions. That's what you think you'll notice. Maldini could play obviously on the left. He could play on the right. He could play center back. Nedved, you could play him as a winger. You could play him as in the midfield. He was very multifunctional. So yeah, great player. His heyday was at Juventus. And he was so gifted mentally that he actually went upstairs after the end of his career. He worked as part of the staff. I think he was a sporting director for Juventus up until a couple of years ago. So yeah, great player, great football brain. The Ballon d'Or might be obviously controversial, but I'm happy that a player with high IQ has gotten the Ballon d'Or. Final thing I want to add is he trained that during his youth. And a lot of these players who are two-footed train that during their youth. It's not something you can easily acquire if you are adolescent or teenage or adult. You have to work on it very early on. In the same way, obviously, as I told you, I'm a big basketball fan. In basketball, the players who usually train that ambidextry very early on go on to be the best ball handlers. And I think in football, we need to also develop that in the grassroots.
Definitely, yeah. Alejandro, why don't you talk us through a player in the early 2000s who really caught your eye with being both-footed?
Maybe I will say in Barcelona, Marc Overmars.
Yes.
Marc Overmars, really. It was maybe in that Barcelona that was struggling against the first Real Madrid of Los Galácticos. Maybe he was one of the best players because he was able to use both feet to dribble, shoot, cross. Really, it was a quality player. Then the national team of the Netherlands, they enjoyed so much with him.
Yeah.
And it's iconic player of La Liga in the late 19th, early beginning of 21st century.
I'm going to let you take the next one as well. Being a Real Madrid fan, maybe the most well-known two-footed player in the world ever, being Zinedine Zidane. Give us some of your memories about him. Obviously, there's one that might stand out to you with his left foot in the Champions League final, but I'll let you talk us through that, being the resident Real Madrid fan.
Zinedine Zidane, really, we are talking about maybe the best player, the first French player has ever played in Real Madrid. A classy player, elegant in the pitch, such skills, really, and also the peak with that volley in the 2002 Champions League final. Really, those are such a good memories from Zinedine Zidane with Real Madrid.
Yeah, I mean, he was just outstanding, wasn't he? I mean, so many memories from him. Obviously, it ended on a sour note, but we'll save that for another day. And finally, as you mentioned earlier, Marc Overmars, a Dutch player. There's obviously been more Dutch players throughout history. I mean, Johan Cruyff being one of them, who kind of transformed the game. But a bit more recent one who was very unlucky to not be crowned the world's best player at one point. Jibril, why don't you tell us a bit more about Wesley Sneijder?
Yeah, absolutely. So earlier I talked about someone who's been crowned Ballon d'Or who maybe shouldn't have won it in Pavel Nedved. This is the opposite. This is someone who should have won it in 2010, had a tremendous season, didn't win it by a fine margin. I always think about that Arjen Robben miss in the final I think if that ball had gone through, he would have been the Ballon d'Or, Wesley Sneijder. So obviously very unlucky not to have won the Ballon d'Or, but still we remember him fondly for what he had. His career, his prowess, obviously two-footed player, had that Dutch technique, which I don't know, maybe there's something in the water there, but there's this Dutch technique they have. The midfielders, obviously Bergkamp. So there's something about that Dutch technique. Obviously that's taught in the academies. They have very good academies in the Netherlands. So yeah, there's this long lineage of Dutch players who are very good technically. Bergkamp, Sneijder, obviously. And Sneijder was pulling the strings in the midfield for Inter Milan. He did it for Real Madrid. Didn't quite reach the heights at Real Madrid. Obviously, he had his big breakthrough at Ajax. But yeah, a fine player. The number 10 position is disappearing from football, unfortunately. We've all noticed it. Sneijder is one of the last true number 10s in football, along with Mesut Ozil, all those guys. So I would like to see the next crop of number 10 start to emerge again, because it's a position we need in football. It's an emblematic position.
I think there's one coming through that I'm going to save for a bit later that I will reveal later on. I'm not sure he's from where you think he's from, but yeah, very, very talented player who is one to watch. But we're going to move on to a special segment now where we all know the natural foot of the following three players. But as you mentioned earlier, Jibril, they've got that finishing technique. They've got that element where they can produce power with their weak foot. And it'll be hard to tell which is their weaker foot. So Alejandro, why don't you start us off on this section? An iconic striker, an iconic Brazilian striker, Ronaldo Nazário.
Phenomenal, really. One of the best strikers we've seen in football, really. Do you know he used to say he could hardly use his left foot when he started playing? Really. Mm-hmm. So it's an iconic player, a player that has changed the way how we see football, and a player that has made us a lot of us making fall in love with football. Really, it's Ronaldo. It's also a player, and also, do you know who should be thankful Ronaldo to which another Brazilian legend, Zico. Yeah. Yes. Zico, because when he was a kid, of course, to Pele for sure, but also to Zico, because when he was a kid, he watched an interview with him, and he was explaining that the ability of developing his left foot, he gained it by hitting a ball against the wall, a technique that used first Bobby Charlton and then a lot of players also. So then Ronaldo started to do that. And years later, he has used both feet to score all those goals for clubs such as Barca, Inter, Real Madrid. And one question that I ask you about Ronaldo: which goal is the one that you like most of his career?
Right, you're really testing me here because I was about 4 years old when he was playing. But there's a goal he scored where he goes through and he steps over the ball, takes it around the keeper and slots it in. I've seen it hundreds of times. I think it's for Brazil.
You mean the one against Compostela?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, really, that's
very good goal.
Very good goal. That's a tremendous goal. Also, the ability of Ronaldo we saw in the World Cup final in 2002.
Yeah, he was just a great player. Yeah. Jibril, what's your favourite goal?
I'd say that goal in the 2006 World Cup, where he basically just shimmies, step overs and scores. It was in the group stages. I'm not quite sure if it was against South Korea or Ghana. I think it was against Ghana. Yeah, it was a great goal. I think that's my favourite one because I don't know, I just was mesmerised by his step overs. So that's my favourite one.
I wanted to bring up something about him and the step over, and I watched a clip and I have forgotten the player who said it now, but he did it in a game against Ronaldo. He did a step over, cut in and scored. And at the end of the game, a Phenomenal came up to him and said, "How'd you do that?" And he told him. And then that became his signature move. I mean, I think if you see clips of Ronaldo Nazário, like the step over, cut in, bang, you know, apparently, and he just asked the player how he did it. He told him, and it became his signature move. And I think that's just telling to how willing he was to learn and how amazing it is to be able to learn how to use that weak foot of his. Jibril, go on, tell us about another striker who maybe we know is his strong foot, his natural foot, but his weaker foot could produce those moments of magic as well.
Yeah, so I'd go with Diego Forlan. One of those players whose international career is probably better than his club career, which is a very rare thing in football. We have the example of Miroslav Klose, who's the best scorer in the World Cup, but his club career is a bit anonymous. So Forlan, obviously, the big moment in his career was the 2010 World Cup. That was in my opinion, that was one of the best individual performances in the World Cup. Because over the course of the tournament, he just shone through and he carried a very average Uruguayan team. We have to admit it.
Yeah, Forlan, he was really good. He did drag that Uruguay team to that semi-final of the 2010 World Cup. That was one of the first World Cups I remember, actually. So I do remember his performance there. But of course, we can't leave this little section without talking about the Ronaldo that came after Nazário. Cristiano. Obviously well known for being prepared, meticulously planning out his career and his training to reach the highest level. So it is no surprise that his left foot was as good as his right foot. Again, that just ability to strike and find the back of the net for Man United, Real Madrid, Juventus, Al Nassr, and for his country, Portugal, he was outstanding. Ali, I believe you wanted to tell us a little bit about some of the Spanish players who might be ambi-pedaled, as we've discussed earlier.
Well, in the Spanish, the golden generation of Spain, from the World Cup champions in 2010, they are a lot of them, but I will mention three. Pedro, that still plays in Lazio and still is performing on a very good level. We are seeing that he's still scoring goals and showing his quality. Santi Cazorla, an icon of Premier League football and still also giving bites of its magic at Real Oviedo in Segunda División in Spain. And of course, David Villa, El Guaje, the Spain's top scorer in all history. We are talking about a player who has been maybe the best striker Spain has ever had in history. So they are three icons of Spanish football, and they have something in common. They know how to use both feet.
Yeah, definitely. There's a couple of other players, Ivan Perisic, maybe not Spanish, but Ivan Perisic, Kevin De Bruyne, and we've obviously mentioned Heung-min Son, who all really, really excel in the being ambi-pedaled. Kevin De Bruyne, his passing range on both feet is amazing. Heung-min Son, his ability to find the back of the net and dribble, he's very, very competent at both. And Ivan Perisic, he's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. He can kind of do a job for you anyway, isn't that right, Jibril? He's a left back, he's a left winger, he's a right winger, he's whatever you need him to be.
Absolutely. I think you used the right term there, Swiss Army knife, born in Croatia. The thing about being two-footed, when you're someone like Perisic who plays on the wing, is that you don't have to consistently cut back onto your strong foot to cross the ball.
Yeah.
When you receive the ball, you can cross it first time. Yeah. And that split second where you actually don't control the ball or don't cut back into your strong foot, sometimes it's all the difference, because it allows you to basically find the striker without giving the opposition time to readjust the back line. Yeah. So that's why being two-footed, it might sound like a luxury skill to have, but it's not. That split second it gives you on the pitch, it comes with a lot of goals when you least expect it. So that's why someone like Perisic has had this longevity. He's still playing at a high level.
Yeah,
he's still playing in the Champions League at this age. So same with Cazorla. Cazorla in the midfield, of course, but still obviously showing flashes of magic. So yeah, I mean, being two-footed is not a luxury skill. It's something. It's a hidden weapon you can deploy at any moment on the pitch.
Definitely. Just before we wrap up, have we got any special shout-outs we want to mention? I'll ask you for your favourites in a second, but is anyone we haven't mentioned today that maybe is two-footed? I'll start, actually. The man I was talking about who maybe is going to be that new mould of number 10, Rayan Cherki at Lyon. In the Europa League, I believe it was, or was it at the weekend? He took a corner with his left foot in swinging, and then he took a corner with his right foot in swinging. He just took the corner the same way from both sides. I mean, that's something I've not seen done in a very, very, very long time. And I have high hopes that he might become the new mould of number 10 in that Wesley Sneijder ilk, but I don't know. Either of you got any special shout outs you want to make?
Yes, Leandro Trossard. In the same vein as Cherki, he actually played corners. 2 corners with 2 different feet in a Champions League game, I believe. It was against Shakhtar Donetsk. The video is on YouTube. If you are curious, you can go check it. But he's this for me. We've been talking about legends in the whole show. I want to talk about the players who are not quite at that high star caliber, but still deliver that 2-footed ability we have been talking about. And for me, Trossard, that's why you can basically play him everywhere across the front line for Arsenal. He can play striker, he can play on the wing, he can play even as an attacking midfielder. So underrated player, Trossard, and that ability of him to be 2-footed has allowed him to play for Arsenal because he was at Brighton. He showed flashes there. So yeah, I wanted to give a big shout out to Trossard. We don't talk about Belgian players enough, but they're there.
But Alejandro, any special shout outs you want to make?
I will say maybe Brahim Diaz.
Okay.
Brahim Diaz, really, we are seeing him in Real Madrid, the quality he has, and also he knows how to use both foot.
Yeah.
And it's a special kind of player. So, I mean, of the actual moment in La Liga is maybe Brahim Diaz is the main name, I will say, because, for example, another name is Isco, but it's not with both foot. I think it's only right foot handed, so it's...
Yeah, nice. And now we'll just go, just quickly, who is your favourite 2-footed player of all time? Jibril, I'll start with you here. Give myself a little bit of time to think. I've got a couple names up there, but Jibril, who's your favourite?
We haven't spoken about Neymar. Neymar is very 2-footed.
There you go.
My favourite is Neymar. I have to say, despite the histrionics, despite the antics, I do think Neymar is the most talented 2-footed player of his generation. And for me, it just adds to the unpredictability of Neymar because he's a 2-footed player who's very proficient at dribbling. When you're a defender, how do you shift the weight of your body when you're facing Neymar? That's the big equation. And that's why Neymar wins a lot of his takeovers, take-ons, because he's very unpredictable when he dribbles. So Neymar, for me, is the big shout. He's lost a bit of pace, but he hasn't lost that 2-footedness.
No. Alejandro, your favourite 2-footed player of all time?
Zinedine Zidane. I mentioned it earlier. Really, it's an easy choice.
I've got a couple in my mind. Neymar was one of them. I love watching Neymar play. It's okay. Harry Kane's another. I've said it before. I think Harry Kane might be the most complete striker in the world, and I think his left foot is a part of that. He can hit it on his left, he can hit it on his right. But a personal favourite, someone that maybe really, really goes under the radar, is Adam Lallana. Obviously, he used to play in Liverpool's midfield, but he was one of those players that you never noticed that he was 2-footed, but you always went, oh, he's had a good game. Oh, and he's getting out of positions that you didn't expect him to get out of, etc., etc. So yeah, I think Adam Lallana might just pip Harry Kane from a biased point of view.
Yeah, I think this is a debate for another day. But Adam Lallana is just, for me, an example of an England player who England didn't maximise enough in the national team. Because when Lallana was at Southampton, when he broke through, I was like, this is the number 10 that England had been crying out for since Gascoigne. So obviously that's a shame. And for Harry Kane, that's an example of a player who maybe is not a ball carrier with 2 feet, but who's a good striker of the football with 2 feet. And I think he even scored in the North London derby with his left foot once. Powerful shots.
He scored numerous left-footed goals because you wouldn't know. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't look unnatural. But as you said, Adam Lallana, a bit of a maverick. He's maybe like not English in the way he moves. Right? He doesn't move like an Englishman.
English now, so.
No, exactly. There you go. There we go. Obviously, we're having a look at Ousmane Dembele wrapping up on his career up to now, and hopefully he can carry on his amazing form, maybe even into the World Cup next year. Talking about some of the best 2-footed players of all times. If you're listening, if you've made it this far, why don't you let us know some of your favourite 2-footed players of all times in the comments, and I'm sure we'll catch you soon, maybe talking about players that England haven't utilised or centre-backs that are absolutely mental, like Pepe we talked about earlier. But again, Jibril and Alejandro, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll catch you soon.